Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'm going to have a go at this plant because it's not doing well. And like I've always said, if you've got a plant that you think ought to be doing well and it isn't, try and think why. Now, the progression of this plant, starting down here, this is the bit I originally had, and while I'm at it I can see I'm starting to get some scale, and scale was the destruction of this plant. It absolutely decimated it last year, and all these wishy-washy soapy things just didn't work. Now there's an example, that leaf just fell off, and you can see the scale are getting a hold again. There's a couple of adults there and some white crawly ones there. Yeah, so they're about on this plant again. But the plant isn't doing well, and part of it looks like it's just not hydrated enough. Now you'd think that wouldn't be a problem with that sort of root system, but it is. The roots that are in this old moss have died back, so the chances are that moss has gone acidic and is breaking down badly. There's not a lot of it, but it's where the plant was originally mounted. Whereas all the new growth that's pushed on, apart from a couple of attached roots, which I'm now going to lose, they've gone aerial and they're not hydrating. I pour water over it and they're just not getting enough water. So this one doesn't like being mounted. Yes, I could soak it, I could put it in the bucket, you know, in the Vander bucket and give it a good soaking, but I just think it's going to do better in a pot before I lose too many of these aerial roots, because at the moment there's a lot of these are just not attaching. They're reaching the bark and just stopping their progress. So this is Prosthetia garciana. I don't want to lose the plant because it has lovely blooms on, but it's not doing well on the mount, so we'll try it in a pot. As I said, I'm going to lose some roots here. That's just something you have to accept when you unmount something. Most of the older roots are down in this broken down moss and are no longer viable anyway, so they don't matter too much. Some of the newer ones that have attached, well, tough. There's plenty of new aerial roots that once they go down in the pot they will be satisfactory. This snapping sound is the old roots. You can see they're not viable. See the little stringy bits as they pull off of the mount? So they're not good roots. Some of the good roots are attached, and I will lose some of those. But hopefully not too many. This is the area where I'm going to lose roots here. You know, they have attached. But hopefully they'll branch where they've been damaged. Okay, and I'll take the opportunity while I've got it off the mount to take off the oldest part of the plant. That means it's going to break into two, possibly three, but they can all go in the same pot. It'll still be a nice big plant by the time I've finished, and I'll take the opportunity to strip all the sheaths off and get rid of the hidey places where these scale are, you know, they're hiding out and they're avoiding one, detection, and two, treatment. But anyway, I'll give the plant a good clean up. I can just feel the pseudobulbs are not hydrated properly. You can see little creasings start to appear. So I need to get it in a media where it can just stay moist longer. When I water this, it's dry within an hour. Of course, then it's got to go to the next day before it gets another dose. So I'll trim it up, see what I've got left. I mean, this older part down here is just going to go. And anything with good roots on, clean the sheaths off, and then we'll get it in a pot. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've ended up with two reasonable pieces and some bits of scrap basically that I've got more than enough of the plant to save. Now the fact that this wasn't growing really badly as an aerial plant, you know, mounted with most of its roots hanging in the air, I'm not going to go mad and sink it straight into a pot, because I'm trying to hurry here. I've forgotten to trim off the obviously dead roots, so we'll just have a quick go at that. I mean, there aren't a huge number of obviously dead roots, most of them aren't too bad, but there are a few, mainly down the older part of the plant. You know, the newer part of the plant's not bad, and quite honestly, these are going to go in next to no media in actual fact. The other good thing is I did cut the rhizome, obviously, to get the pieces I wanted. And we don't have any pretty colours on the rhizome, so that's good. I check every time I can. You know, once you've had this thing, it just becomes not an obsession, but just something that you keep your eye on. So literally, this is going in a holy pot. And it's going to be left to do its own thing on the ground. Some of these roots are going to stay aerial, but close to the media, so they can get down in there, but still plenty of air. Because of the odd shaped rhizome, some of the rhizome will end up in the media. So if it's not going to rot, it's going to need a hell of a lot of air around it. So my solution, stick it in a holy pot. Otherwise I'd have to cut the pieces up so small as to not really have much of a plant. So to keep it as a reasonable sized plant, I'm sticking it in a holy pot, plenty of air, but the bark will still stay hydrated more than a set of aerial roots will. So it'll give it more chance to take some water in and hopefully get going a little bit better. As I say, some roots in the air, I'm not fussed, not pressing this down, just gently settling it in his pot, and then the bark can do the work for me. All I've got to do is pour the water in. So this, you know, this will just go into the daily watering routine now. Now this was a bit of the pre-drilled holes in these smaller pots are a right pain because they're often not clean, so nothing will go through the hole. So I had to get my sharpened screwdriver and widen this. They only have 3, 4 would have been good, but I pre-wired those 2. But now both of those 2 are going to have to come out through that hole because the actual holes in the pot on the smaller ones are very low down. So to actually do like I do with the thicker wire on the larger plants, I just can't do with these smaller ones. All I can do is go through the actual provided holes as best I can. I'm not sure this wire is going to do a huge amount of good, but hopefully it will just keep it still while the roots get hold of something. Either the pot or the bark, not fussed which, just get hold of something. I'm going to move the plant trying to get the wire through the holes now, but it'll settle down afterwards. Can't see what the hell I'm doing here. It's quite early in the day. Later in the day the sun comes round and sort of comes in through this window, which helps when I'm filming, but at the moment it's no help at all. So I'm just going to find a couple of places, get these wires through that hole, pull them reasonably tight just to keep it semi-firm. As I say, it doesn't have to be locked in place. It's I just cannot see what I'm doing. I've just got shadows everywhere and just can't see. Gotcha. I think. Have I got 2 bits poking out yet? No, not yet. Yeah, now we have. Right. I haven't got my pliers, but hopefully I can just gently hold these with the wire cutters and pull. Yeah, that's got it. So that's that piece. Yeah, that's not bad. Get hold of the other piece and give it a tug. See where that's going to bind onto. And we certainly don't want it sat right across a new growth, do we? So I'll have to back up a bit here. Tease that round that new growth. That's better. Oh, that had all the hallmarks of breaking that new growth off then. But managed it. Let me just give that another tug. Yep. That'll do. As I say, it doesn't have to be rigid, it's only to just hold it still for a minute while the roots get a hold. And just trim those ends and tuck them back over the side of the pot out the way so I don't catch my fingers on them. Right, and we'll try that. It's got new growths coming out all over the place, and I think that's going to fill that little pot quite quickly. All I've got to do is keep on top of that scale. Cleaned off the sheaths, gave it a good spray, and I'll just keep my eye on it. A new idea, not tried by me yet, so it's not a Roger idea, it's a somebody else idea. But they commented on one of my repotting videos where I said, you know, and I'll give the roots a good clean up with the hydrogen peroxide, make sure everything's dead. And they did actually comment that the rubbing alcohol actually does a better job than the hydrogen peroxide. Now that's not confirmed, not by me anyway, but that doesn't sound a bad idea. I mean, I'm quite happy to go around with my little cotton buds, dabbing things with alcohol, expecting them to die, and they do. So, you know, perhaps a complete spray over the plant with alcohol might be a good idea. I've also heard, again, not me, other people saying things, that the rubbing alcohol at 70% on leaves and things, obviously it evaporates quite fast, but somebody said that it's possible it can do cell damage if it's sort of left, you know. So giving a plant a good soak in rubbing alcohol is not a bad idea, but it might be a good idea that, as you know, let it do its job and then actually rinse it off afterwards, just to make sure. I mean, in theory, the H2O2, the O2 is the oxidizing process. And once it's finished doing that, it just becomes H2O, which, as we all know, is water. So the need to rinse off isn't there. I still rinse it. I still rinse it. Now this one I want to put in, I was going to say I want to put it in medium bark, but quite honestly, most of what's in that will do. And again, I only want this sat in there, you know, and the idea of putting one in this type of pot separately is that this will be a sellable plant, and I don't want to create plants that I plan to sell in the future in my holy pots, because I'd be selling one of my holy pots as well. And you know, I have this theory that when those holy pots are gone, they're gone. Getting some more might not be that easy. And of course I've run out of media, so I'll just break off. I just need to go and get a bit more to top that up. And I'm going to top it up with smaller bark, just because it's in that sort of pot. Yeah, what's in the bottom of the pot was the large grade bark, but I'm just going to top up the surface with the medium grade. It'll give the roots something a bit better to get hold of. And the medium bark, as you go down the grade, you start off with the biggest, chunkiest, and then you get a bit less chunky, and then you get a bit less chunky, and you're down into sort of smaller pieces until you get to the really small grade bark, you know, for things like seedlings or mixing in with your sphagnum moss. And the smaller the grade of bark, the longer it stays wet. Point of order. Yeah? The big stuff seems to dry the fastest, and it's logical. It's got so much air around it. The smaller pieces can trap water between the pieces, which the big bits just don't do. It just goes straight through. But the smaller pieces can trap some water, they just stay wet longer. Okay, so that's those two done. Give them both a good soak now and wash all the dust off the bark, and start the initial process of hydrating these roots better than they were before. So, two nice little new ones. I'll put the tag in the one that I'm keeping. The other one I'll have to have a tag to sell it, obviously, but yeah. Now, where that was a mount, I've got plenty of space for mounts. I haven't got as much space for potted plants, so I've now got to find some shelf space for those two. That's the downside of taking something off a mount. But I have a theory, I'll let you know. The Dendrobium harveyanum plant, although it blooms nicely, and I love the blooms, the plant is not doing very well. It's in a pot. Can you guess where that's going next? You know, when something's not working very well, try a change. And most of my Dendrobiums, excluding the Nobiles and the Latoria types, but virtually all of my other Dendrobiums are mounted. And are they doing okay? Yes, they are doing okay. And I think harveyanum needs to go on a mount. So that clears a lot of space on the shelf, because that's a big pot. That'll be the next job. Anyway, I'll end that one there. That's Prosthetia garciana. Pretty little blooms. I'll have put a pop-up somewhere in this video before it gets posted. Show you the blooms. Highly fragrant blooms. Quite nice patterning on them. So yeah, it's an attractive plant. I don't want to lose it. But I've got to stop these. Let me show you a bad one. I've got to stop these distortions. Now this is lack of hydration. This is this plant's equivalent of the concertina leaves on a Miltoniopsis. This is how it shows on this plant. New growths push on nice and strong, but they're just not getting hydrated enough to push out proper leaves. Practically every new growth on this plant pushes out a sheath. Do they bloom? Well, they haven't recently. And they haven't recently because it's just lacking oomph where it's not been getting hydrated. So we'll run with that for now. Thanks for dropping by. See you next time. A little add-on. I didn't actually film doing this because I've done enough mounting videos lately. They're all the same. But this is Dendrobium harveyanum, and I've hardwired it onto a mount basically. When I took it out of its pot, it was blatantly obvious the pot was too big. Yeah. So the bottom of the roots was staying wet too long, not getting a chance to dry out properly. Obviously on a mount, when it's hydrated, it gets hydrated well, but because it's on a mount, it then gets to dry quite fast, and I think that's going to be more appropriate. And in addition to that, I've got hanging space, and I just think that, you know, these blooms hanging down from a mount are just going to look so much better. So yeah, that was the place where the Prosthetia garciana used to live. And now harveyanum can live there for a while, and we'll see how he gets on. There were some reasonable roots, not many, but there were some new roots growing out the base of the plant, and the rest of the roots weren't too bad. So it's got a good root system in under that moss. It's wired on nice and firm, and as I said, the blooms can now hang downwards, and hopefully it'll now produce some new growths, because that's the bit I'm worried about. It's the lack of new growths on this one lately, despite the fact it blooms incredibly well. Another nice spike waiting to come on there. Another one over here. Another one here. Yeah, plenty of bloom spikes. Another big long one hanging down here. Think how nice that's going to look when that opens, hanging down like that. That's just going to look so much better. And this plant just has to be looked after with blooms like that. Just has to be done. So anyway, I thought that I'd add that on the end. As I say, I didn't bother filming it, but that's the result, and that's where it will live for a while now. That's in the direct line of fire with the fan, so it'll get plenty of air movement, the moss will dry quickly, and then it can be re-wetted, and it can have a nice fast wet dry cycle, which I think is just going to suit it an awful lot better. So there we go. That's that one done.